Knowing where Saturn is placed in transit in Pisces when it goes into Pisces, not only from your rising sign, your zodiac sign, or from your moon sign, but it is also important to know where Saturn is placed or going, how many houses it is going away from your Saturn in your natal chart, in your birth chart. Hello, Namaskar and Adab to all my friends from your friend Astrology and Guide Irfan. Once more with you from your very own channel, Astro Assurance. Knowing that Saturn is now going into or transiting into the sign of Pisces and is going to be there for more than 2.5 years, it's very important to see Saturn's transit into Pisces from different perspectives, different angles. One of the ways to see it is from your zodiac sign, your rising sign. And it should also be seen to corroborate your mental perspective, your emotional perspective, where your mind is going, where your focus is going, which direction you're going from the moon sign as well. However, it plays a very, very important role also to see where the transiting Saturn is going from where your Saturn is placed in your natal chart. Is it going into the 6th house, 8th house, 10th house, or the same house in your natal chart, in your return placement? In a return placement is also important to see. So today we are going to see how when Saturn is going certain number of houses away in transit in Pisces from your natal Saturn, from your birth chart Saturn, what kind of probabilities, what kind of results it can bring for you. Now, for those people who have the natal Saturn in the Aries sign, which is its debilitation sign, and now Saturn is going into transit into the Pisces sign. So we are seeing only from a natal sign perspective where your Saturn is placed rather than your rising sign. So from your natal sign perspective, Saturn is placed in the Aries sign, and Saturn, the transiting Saturn, is going 12 houses away from the natal chart. So this is a 12-2 placement. So because Saturn is in debilitation in the Aries sign and the transiting Saturn is going 12 houses away, so this is a challenging placement where expenses, losses, problems can also come to the native if the native is not careful, the native is not diligent. So firstly, there are no common houses which either of the natal Saturn or the transiting Saturn aspect. They are influencing different houses. However, because the transiting Saturn is going into the 12th house from the natal Saturn, surely the effect of career, of long distance travel, and how you're gaining from education from your career also are coming into perspective, especially because the transiting Saturn is aspecting your 2nd house of income, the 6th house of service, also the 9th house of long distance travel and higher education. So this is surely a challenging placement. However, on the other hand, from the transiting Saturn, the natal Saturn is placed in the 2nd house. So income, livelihood, earning of money potential is very, very crucial. So either you may gain more opportunities because you're diligent, you're careful, or you may even lose opportunities or lose money. So now let's take an example of if Saturn is where Saturn is placed in your rising sign, and from that see if Saturn is in your Aries sign, then how does it play out? So we are just taking the example of any rising sign where Saturn is placed in the Aries sign. Here we are taking the example of the Libra sign. So if your rising sign is Libra and your natal Saturn is placed in the Aries sign in the 7th house, now the transiting Saturn is going into the 6th house. And so from a rising sign perspective, Saturn is debilitated in the 7th house of people, teamwork, ability to work with people. And the transiting Saturn is going into the 6th house of service and aspecting the 8th house of issues, troubles, obstacles. So what will happen is because the natal Saturn is placed in Aries sign and debilitation, the transiting Saturn going 12 houses away can bring challenges with respect to relations or teamwork, either connected to your service, either connected to your 12th house of foreign lands, foreign occupations, connected to foreign companies as well. And aspecting the Taurus sign in the 8th house, which means ups and downs in your career, connected to teamwork, connected to working with people is also coming in, is because the transiting Saturn is aspecting the 3rd house of effort. So higher effort would be required to overcome challenges in teamwork and so that you are overcoming sudden obstructions, sudden issues which come in from money perspective, service perspective, especially if you're working in foreign lands or working for foreign companies or working in a multinational corporation. So that is for those people whose Saturn is placed in the Aries sign in your natal chart. Now let's say the placement of Saturn in the Taurus sign in your natal chart. So if Saturn is placed in the Taurus sign in your natal chart, and now the transiting Saturn is going into the Pisces sign. So from Saturn's perspective, which is placed in the Taurus sign in your natal chart, the transiting Saturn is going 11 houses away from the natal Saturn. So this is the 11th replacement. Now, again, there are no common houses that either of the two Saturns are influencing because they are not aspecting any house with their common aspect. However, the transiting Saturn is aspecting the natal Saturn with its third aspect. So what is the transiting Saturn saying? The transiting Saturn is saying that if you need to make more money, if you need to have more stability, Saturn is stability and Taurus sign is the sign of money, nutrition, livelihood. So if you need to have a stability in earning potential, in your nutrition, in your earning potential, then you'll have to work more hard. You'll have to put in more effort over the next 2.5 years while Saturn, the transiting Saturn remains in the Pisces sign. And the transiting Saturn is also aspecting the 5th house of change in career, change in work. Because from a natal Saturn perspective, the transiting Saturn rules both the 10th house and the 9th house. However, it is also aspecting with its 10th aspect, the career aspect, the Sagittarius sign in the 8th house. So to earn money, to get better livelihood, you will have to overcome obstructions, challenges, problems. However, you will have to ensure that you are making good network connections. Your ability to work with people is enhanced and you are able to create rapport, better rapport with people who you work with and your bosses. Now, this is from a natal Saturn perspective. However, suppose, let's take the example of your natal Saturn being in Taurus in some rising sign, just taking some rising sign at random. So let's say your rising sign is Sagittarius, and in your Sagittarius rising sign, ascendant sign, Saturn is in your natal chart in the Taurus sign, and the transiting Saturn is going into the Pisces sign, into your 4th house. Now from your 4th house, from your rising sign perspective, the natal Saturn is placed in the 6th house in the Taurus sign. So here, this is a good placement in your natal chart because Saturn rules the 2nd house of income and the 3rd house of effort, which means the income and effort is coming from service connected to money because it is in Taurus, which is the sign of money, nutrition, livelihood. And Saturn, the transiting Saturn is getting into the 4th house of assets and aspecting the natal Saturn with the 3rd aspect, which means if you have made effort and if you're ready to make effort bend your back, then in these 2.5 years, you may make a lot of assets. You may get more conveniences. You may be able to influence your career to be able to even get growth and enhance your stature in society also. So this is overall, if your rising sign is Sagittarius, then this will bring, just to give one example, I took Sagittarius, you could have taken some any other example. So this is going to be a good transit. So if you have Saturn in the Taurus sign, do see from a rising sign perspective how many houses Saturn, the natal Saturn is placed from your transiting Saturn and which houses both of them are influencing. Now, when you look at the Gemini sign being the sign where your natal Saturn is placed in your birth chart. So if Saturn is placed in the Gemini sign in your birth chart, then looking from the Gemini sign's perspective, Saturn perspective in the Gemini sign, the transiting Saturn is going into the 10th house from your natal Saturn and in the sign of Pisces. Now, going 10 houses away, you will find both the Saturns, the natal Saturn as well as the transiting Saturn are influencing two houses commonly. Firstly, the natal Saturn is aspecting the transiting Saturn with the 10th aspect, and both of them are also aspecting the 7th house. I'm talking from a natal Saturn's perspective, not the rising sign. So from a natal sign's perspective, both the Saturn, the transiting as well as the natal Saturn are aspecting the 7th house of teamwork, ability to work with people. And the transiting Saturn is in the 10th house of career. with the 10th aspect of the natal Saturn being on the transiting Saturn. So your career is getting influenced with your ability to work with people, how well you work with people, and through that you are also able to make assets, because the transiting Saturn's 7th aspect is on the 4th house of assets, conveniences, and also on the 7th house of partnerships, relationship, even marriage. And the transiting Saturn is also aspecting the Taurus sign in the 12th house. So career getting influenced or connected to foreign lands or multinational corporations, or those people who work in isolation or in IT, or any person who works an individual role. For them, career enhancement is given. Career enhancement will happen because both the Saturns are influencing the 10th house. The natal Saturn is aspecting the transiting Saturn with the 10th aspect, and the transiting Saturn is placed in the 10th house from a natal Saturn's perspective. So this is the overall gain making placement because they are 10-4 from each other. But just this is from a natal Saturn perspective. But if Saturn is in Gemini, but your rising sign, your zodiac sign could be anything. So from a rising sign perspective, let's take one example. Let's say your rising sign is Capricorn and your natal Saturn is now placed in the Gemini sign. And the transiting Saturn is going 10 houses away from the natal Saturn in Pisces sign, but in the 3rd house from a rising sign of Capricorn perspective. So now Saturn being in Gemini in the 6th house, and both the transiting as well as the natal Saturn are aspecting a 12th house in the Sagittarius sign of long distance travel, while Saturn is placed in the 6th house of service. So in service, you may be able to make more gains, especially if you're ready to go long distance, travel long distance, go to foreign lands, or you are able to transform your thinking in such a manner that you're ready to accept, or you widen your thinking to be able to take changes in career even, because the transiting Saturn is aspecting your 5th house and aspecting 5th house in Taurus sign. So changes may come upon to you in your career which lead to a betterment in service connected to money, higher monies also, especially foreign lands or an individual role. So both the from natal Saturn perspective in Gemini as well as the rising sign perspective, 12th house of income, expenses, foreign lands, foreign travel, foreign clients are all getting connected and all are getting activated. So do keep this in mind. And do see in your natal chart, whichever is your rising sign, how many houses, which houses natal Saturn is and which house Saturn is going away from it, to be able to ascertain and fathom the connection better. Now, for those people who have Cancer Saturn, which means Saturn is in the Cancer sign in your natal chart. So if Saturn is in the Cancer sign in your natal chart, then the transiting Saturn is going 9 houses away from your natal Saturn, your birth sign Saturn. So this is the 9-5 placement for the natal and the transiting Saturn. So overall, this is a very gain-making transition for your Saturn while it is going into the Pisces sign and 9 houses away from your natal Saturn. However, what does Saturn in the Cancer sign mean? It is a sign of stability in emotions. Emotional intelligence is needed, empathy is needed. So a person who is more stable in his mind, stable in his focus, stable in his relationships, that person can make a lot of gain when Saturn transits into Pisces sign, 9 houses away from its natal house placement. Especially because both the Saturns, the natal Saturn and the transiting Saturn, both are aspecting the 3rd house from a natal Saturn perspective in the sign of Virgo, the sign of service. So if you are put in the effort or ready to put in the effort, then in education, long distance travel, you can make a lot of money, but through your network connection, your ability to work with people. However, the transiting Saturn is also aspecting with its 10th aspect, Sagittarius sign in the 6th house, which means the 10th aspect of work and career is getting connected to the 6th house of service, but in Sagittarius sign. So this is a very strong sign of being connected with those people who are from long distance travel or in foreign countries, but to be able to make gains from that placement, you will have to be somebody who's emotionally stable. Your ability to work with people is good. You have the ability to work with people in a good rapport, and you're ready to bend your back to have good relations with people, especially because Saturn, for natal Saturn's perspective, rules the 7th and the 8th house. Now, this is where Saturn is placed in the Cancer sign. However, it may not be the rising sign. Rising sign can be something else. So let's take an example of some other rising sign at random where Saturn is placed in the Cancer sign. So say for example, your rising sign is Aquarius, and for Aquarius rising sign person, Saturn is going into or is placed in the natal chart in your natal chart in Cancer sign, and now going or transiting into your second house in Pisces. So yeah, you can take any rising sign example. I'm just taking one example of Aquarius. So Saturn, in your natal Saturn being placed in the Cancer sign, and now the transiting Saturn going into the second house of income, of nutrition, of higher monies, money in the bank. And both of them are aspecting your 8th house in the sign of Virgo. So this is the placement where health is very important. You need to take care of your health. You need to take proper care of your diet and nutrition. Otherwise, because Saturn is placed in the Cancer sign in the 6th house, aspecting the 8th house, both of them. So your health can come under a challenge if you are not controlling or not able to take care of your eating habits and exercising. So this can be niggling challenges every now and then in health. The other thing is there could be some ups and downs or transformations from your earning potential. So in these 2.5 years, there will surely be a big opportunity for you to be able to make assets connected to money, especially if you're working in a career which is connected to other people's money, like insurances, taxation, audits, IT, media, and all of that. So this is a good placement overall. So you need to see what is your rising sign when your Saturn is in the natal sign. Natal Saturn is in the Cancer sign when Saturn is going into Pisces, and see your results from there. Now for those people who have a Leo Saturn, which means that in your natal chart, Saturn is placed in the Leo sign. So if your Saturn is placed in the Leo sign in your natal chart, so from a Saturn's perspective, while it is placed in the Leo sign, from there the transiting Saturn is going 8 houses away. So this is becoming an 8-6 placement, whatever may be the rising sign or the moon sign. So from a natal Saturn perspective, Saturn being placed in Leo and the transiting Saturn going 8 houses away. Now the only house both the natal Saturn and the transiting Saturn are influencing are the natal Saturn's 10th aspect on the Taurus sign and the transiting Saturn's 3rd aspect on the Taurus sign in the 10th house. So you're strongly, your ability to work with leadership, because Saturn is in the Leo sign, so ability to work with leadership, and then how you have good rapport with the leadership will help you get more acknowledgement, appreciation, and growth in career, even promotion and earning of money. This is almost guaranteed if you work very hard over the last 2.5 years, especially because Saturn was in Aquarius, in the sign of social connections, large organizations. Now going in Pisces, which means it is overcoming challenges of the 8th house transformations issues. And through a transformation or change, there can be more money coming into your career because of your ability to lead, and a leadership role may also come to you, especially because the transiting Saturn is not only aspecting the Taurus sign, but also the 6th house of service in the Kalpurush Kundli, but here the 2nd house. However, with this 10th aspect, it is aspecting the Sagittarius sign. So this means that a change in career can come about, a change in role can come about in your career, leading to more money, especially if your rapport with leadership is good, and even a leadership role can come to you. Now let's see, if your Saturn is placed in the Leo sign, if the rising sign is something else, then what may be coming by? What results may be coming by? So at random, we are taking the example of the Pisces sign. So if you're in your natal chart, your rising sign is the sign of Pisces, and your natal Saturn is placed in the Leo sign in the 6th house. Now the transiting Saturn is getting into your Lagna in the 1st house. Then the transiting Saturn is going 8 houses away from your natal Saturn. So this is an 8-6 placement. So this is slightly transformative, a challenge bringing in some issues may also be coming by. However, because it is getting into the Lagna, into the 1st house, while your natal Saturn is placed in the 6th house in Leo, which means there can be some friction, some challenges even with leadership if you're not very careful, because the transiting Saturn is directly aspecting the 10th house in the Sagittarius sign. Sagittarius sign is a fiery sign. So gains can either come good if your relations with your rapport with your seniors is good, but if you get into some problems, some issues with them, then surely your ability to be able to grow in the leadership through the leadership in a leadership role can be affected, especially because the transiting Saturn is also aspecting the sixth sign Virgo in the seventh house of ability to work with people. So your ability to work with people can be under question and the leadership role may not become to you, especially because the transiting Saturn as well as your natal Saturn are aspecting the third house of effort. So if you're ready to bend your back and if you put in the effort and ready to put in the effort, then gains can come to you in your career for those people whose Saturn is placed in the Leo sign in the natal chart. Now, for those people who have a Virgo Saturn, which means in your natal chart, Saturn is placed in your Virgo sign, whichever may be your rising sign. So if Saturn is placed in the Virgo sign in your natal chart, then the transiting Saturn is going into the Pisces sign, 7 houses away from your natal Saturn. So this is a 7-7 placement from your natal Saturn and the transiting Saturn perspective. So now the natal Saturn and the transiting Saturn will be aspecting each other with their 7th aspect. This is a very, very powerful placement, very, very powerful denotation as well. So your natal Saturn aspecting your transiting Saturn in the Pisces sign in the 7th house of teamwork, while the transiting Saturn is not only aspecting the natal Saturn but also your 9th house in the Taurus sign and your 4th house in the Sagittarius sign, which means your ability to work in a team role may get you gains and you are also able to make assets. However, the domestic life is also coming under focus here because Saturn is placed in the Virgo sign. So if you're not careful in your relationship at home, then you may unnecessarily create issues or problems with one relationship at home, which may give you trouble over the next 2.5 years. So you need to be careful with that. However, money will still come in, especially connected to long distance travel, higher education, ability to get higher roles, higher certification, higher qualification is also seen. Now here we are taking the example of Saturn being in the Virgo sign, but the rising sign could be anything while Saturn is in the Virgo sign in the natal chart. So let's take one example of some rising sign at random where Saturn is placed in the Virgo sign. So let's say your rising sign is that of Aries, and in the Aries rising sign, your natal Saturn is placed in the Virgo sign as we are taking the example. So in your rising sign of Aries, your natal Saturn is placed in the Virgo sign in the 6th house and aspecting the transiting Saturn in the 12th house in a mutual aspect. While the transiting Saturn is also aspecting your 2nd house of income and the 9th house of long distance travel and gain. So in service, your transiting Saturn is creating an ability to enhance your ability to be able to gain money and make gains as long as you're able to overcome challenges where your team workers are concerned. So those people who are either your team members, who are your colleagues or who work below you, if you don't have a good rapport with them, then there can be issues. And there will be niggling issues every now and then where competition may create challenges for you. And in competitive exams, you'll have to really work hard to be able to get promotion over others or to get appreciation or acknowledgement over others. You'll have to really work hard. But if you do that, then surely gains will come to you. However, mind your expenses because you will have to tighten your purses so that the money still remains with you. Money remains in the bank rather than going waste. Now, if your natal Saturn is in Libra, which means you have a Libra Saturn, which means in your natal Saturn, if Saturn is placed in the Libra sign, then from your natal Saturn's perspective, the transiting Saturn is going into the Pisces sign 6 houses away from the natal Saturn. What does this mean? This means that this is a 6-8 placement from a natal Saturn's perspective. Now, the only house where both the natal house Saturn and the transiting Saturn are influencing is the Sagittarius sign, where the transiting Saturn's 10th aspect is and the natal Saturn 3rd aspect is, which means through an effort, your ability to gain through service in a placement where your qualification, your higher learning, your higher experiences are coming into play in a relationship. So in a relationship, because Saturn is exalted in the Libra sign, so you have an exalted Saturn in your natal chart. This is a fantastic placement. So in effort, you will surely gain in service as long as you are taking care of sudden issues which are coming in your work. So in sudden issues, sudden opportunities may come to you through your effort to be able to gain more. So because you worked really hard, so some new opportunity may suddenly come to you connected to service so that you are able to make more gains. So, and this will be very, very quick, sudden, out of nowhere, out of the blue, it may come in because you have put in a lot of effort somebody may reach out, some consultant may reach out and ask you whether you want to work with them. So through your effort, surely both the transiting and the natal Saturn are activating your third house of effort. Through that, gains are coming in also, and the sixth sign or service is also getting connected. So this is going to be overall good placement. However, keep in mind that the transiting Saturn is going 6 houses away from your natal Saturn. So service is getting connected, but sicknesses, issues, problems from your enemies, your naysayers, all that is also getting connected. So your efforts may go waste if you're not able to identify who is creating challenges behind your back. That could also affect your earning, your nutrition, your money in the bank. However, this can be a transformative position because this is 6-year placement, so that you can gain if you're ready to transform in ability to how you are looking at relationships, how you're looking at connections, even social connections. Now here we are taking the example of Saturn being in the Libra sign in your natal chart, but this could be in any rising sign. So let's take the example at random of Taurus sign being the rising sign, where Saturn is placed in the Libra sign in your natal chart in exaltation. So if your rising sign is Taurus, just to take an example, you could have taken any example here. So for Taurus sign, rising sign people, Saturn being in exaltation in your 6th house of service, while the transiting Saturn is going into Pisces in the 11th house, which means in your social connections in large organizations, you may be able to gain, and even there may be intra-department movement, or you may move up where you are now getting connected. Your role is getting connected to 2 departments or more, or rather than your old role, and this is going to influence or create a better status for you, better dignity for you, better prestige for you also, but that will come through a change, because the transiting Saturn's 7th aspect is on the 5th house of change, because the 5th house is 8th to the 10th house, and the 8th house, the 10th house is also ruled by Saturn. So Saturn's natal Saturn's aspect, 3rd aspect is also in the 8th house, and the transiting Saturn's aspect is also in the 8th house, which means if you manage transformation, if you're ready to change, then a new role, a new transformation may come where you will be, your dignity is enhanced, your stature is enhanced, and through that money is also enhanced through a change which is coming in through your ability to overcome challenges, competition. So this is a very good opportunity for you to overcome competition and to be able to make gains. However, do keep in mind, or do see which is your rising sign if your Saturn is placed in Libra sign, and from that the house rulership, how many houses Saturn is going away. Now, if you have a Scorpio Saturn, which means in your natal chart, Saturn is placed in the Scorpio sign. So this is a very karmic placement, because the zodiac is telling you that your Saturn being in Scorpio sign, which means every now and then you'll have to work hard and you'll have to change or transform to be able to make gains, to be able to gain the stability the Saturn offers you in Scorpio sign, which is the natural 8th house. However, without transformation, without changing, without observing rules, regulations, respecting boundaries, you will not be able to make gains. Now, from your natal Saturn, which is in Scorpio sign, the transiting Saturn is going into the Pisces sign. It is going 5 houses away. So this is the 5-9 placement. The transiting Saturn is going 5 houses away from the natal Saturn, and the natal Saturn is placed 9 houses away from the transiting Saturn. So overall, this is a very gain-making placement. However, the only common house which both of them, the natal Saturn and the transiting Saturn, are influencing is the 7th house and the Taurus sign. Because the natal Saturn's 7th aspect is on the Taurus sign, and the transiting Saturn's 3rd aspect is on the Taurus sign, which means that if you're ready to put in the effort, then stature may be coming to you, better prestige may be coming to you, better gains may be coming through a change, through a transformation. So without a transformation in your thinking, without the transformation in how you work, without your transformation how you deal with people, that change will not come to you. And if the change comes to you, the change will not be a gain-making change, because Saturn is going into the 5th house of change. 5th house from your 10th house. So there will be change in job, change in role. A new change in location may also come, because Saturn also rules the 4th house of home and going into the 5th house of change, and also aspecting with the 3rd aspect, the 7th house of relationship. So in a relationship, if you're ready to transform, if you're ready to change the mindset, then you may also make gains. Livelihood may also improve, your income may also improve, because the transiting Saturn is also aspecting the 2nd house, but in the Sagittarius sign of long distance travel. So you will have to keep your mind open. You may have to go long distance away from your natural thinking. So a transformative thinking may also bring you gains. However, this is Saturn placed in the Scorpio sign in your natal chart, but the rising sign could be anything. Let's take the example of some rising sign at random where Saturn is placed in your Scorpio sign in natal chart to look at it as an example. So let's say your rising sign is that of Gemini, and in your rising sign of Gemini, Saturn is placed in the Scorpio sign in the 6th house. Now, from your natal Saturn, which is placed in the Scorpio sign, the transiting Saturn is getting into the 5th house from it, but into the 10th house in the Pisces sign. And both of them are aspecting and influencing the 12th house in the Taurus sign, which means there may be income connected to career coming in foreign land through a change in service connected to your home. So both of them are very strongly getting connected to home, change of home, movement of home, traveling long distance from home to be able to make gains in a foreign land or with foreign companies and make more money over next 2.5 years. So your start may be slow. You will start with stability, but over a period of time, you will make gains because natal Saturn and transiting Saturn are placed very well from each other in the finance placement. So whichever is your rising sign, do see where your Saturn is placed in the Scorpio sign and going 5 houses away in transit, and then be able to ascertain that placement better. Now, if you have a Sagittarius Saturn, which means in your natal chart, Saturn is placed in the Sagittarius sign. So, if your natal Saturn is in the Sagittarius sign, then the transiting Saturn is going 4 houses away from the natal Saturn. So, the transiting Saturn is going 4 houses away. So, that means the natal Saturn is 10 houses away from the transiting Saturn. So, this is being in a Kendra position from each other. This is a good placement because what it is doing is, it is telling you that Saturn placed in the Sagittarius sign, a fiery sign, but in the sign of higher education, learning from experiences. So, the transiting Saturn is creating an opportunity to make gains and get assets, more assets, houses, conveniences. If you are ready to learn from your experiences, you are using experiential learning to be able to make better gains in your career, because both the transiting Saturn is aspecting with the 7th aspect, the 10th house from a natal Saturn perspective, and the 10th aspect of the natal Saturn is also on the 6th house of service and the 10th house of career. The 6th sign of service, I mean. So this is an overall good placement of making assets from your career. So if you really worked hard, then at home or being able to make assets through your service and through the money that you gain, and through that a better placement or better stature in society, better designation at work is also coming in through career. Very, very strong placement of growth, promotion and career. But this is only from a natal Saturn perspective in Sagittarius sign. However, the rising sign could be anything. So let's take any rising sign at random to see how the placement may work out. Let's say your rising sign is Cancer and your natal Saturn is placed in the Sagittarius sign in the 6th house. This is just a rising sign of Cancer. We are taking at random. We could have taken Taurus, Gemini for those where Saturn is placed in the Sagittarius sign. So here we are taking the example of Cancer sign being the rising sign and your natal Saturn being in the Sagittarius sign. So then the transiting Saturn is going 4 houses away from it in the 9th house in the Pisces sign. So the natal Saturn being in the Sagittarius sign in the 6th house, while it rules the 7th and the 8th house, which means relationships are getting connected to service. But a transformation, a sudden upheaval in relationship may also come in connected to work. Those below you may also create problems and challenges, even emotional challenges, because your rising sign is Cancer. So you need to be real careful when you connect with and work with people who work below you and create the relations. Better relations create better rapport so that you can make gains of the 9th house where your transiting Saturn is going, where its 3rd aspect is on the Taurus sign. So through service, overcoming challenges, problems, ability to work with people, making gains and money gains, especially where you are able to expand your social network because of your ability to work with people, and through that you make gains. But both of them are aspecting the 3rd house of effort. So which means only through effort, the gains may come in where you are able to overcome competitions and make long-term gains, especially connected to money. However, here we have taken the example of the Cancer sign being the rising sign. Whichever is your rising sign, if you have a natal Sagittarius Saturn, do see how many houses, which house the Saturn rules in your rising sign, and from there, 4th house placement of the transiting Saturn, what gains, what probabilities and potential it is bringing for you. Now, for those who have a Capricorn Saturn, which means in your natal chart, Saturn is placed in a Capricorn sign. This is a very strong placement. Saturn being placed in the Capricorn sign gives you an ability to work with boundaries, work hard, be practical, somebody who's very pragmatic, who gives a lot of importance to rules, regulations, structure, and organization. So this is a good Saturn in your natal chart. So the transiting Saturn is going into the Pisces sign, which means 3 houses away from the natal Saturn. So this is the 311 placement, because the transiting Saturn is going 3 houses away from the natal Saturn, and natal Saturn is placed 11 houses from the transiting Saturn. So overall, this is a good placement from Saturn perspective, which is in the Capricorn sign. But what it means is the natal Saturn is aspecting the transiting Saturn with the third aspect, which means if you are ready to work hard and bend your back, then the gains may come to you, because the third aspect of the transiting Saturn is on the Taurus sign. So both the three aspect being taken into the picture, money is coming into the picture, but through a change, because this is the 5th house. From the natal Saturn, the Taurus sign is the 5th house, and the 5th house is the 8th house from the 10th house. So through effort, where the transiting Saturn is placed, you can make more money, especially with foreign lands, foreign connections, but in individual roles. But this is also placement of being able to do something on your own, which means if you have had that idea of working on your own, doing something on your own, starting something new, this is an excellent place for you to start in, especially if you're gaining from your experiences, or you're using your competency and experiences so far to be able to make gains, bring change, and then to be able to make gains. However, this is a placement of natal Saturn being in Capricorn, but the rising sign could be any. Let's take any rising sign at random and then see Saturn placed in the Capricorn sign, what results it can make. Let's say the rising sign is Leo. We are taking the Leo sign at random. It could be any rising sign where natal Saturn is placed in the Capricorn sign. So if your rising sign is Leo, where natal Saturn is placed in the 6th house in the Capricorn sign, and the transiting Saturn is going 3 houses away from it in the 8th house, and then with the third aspect aspecting the 10th house in the Taurus sign, which means the natal Saturn third aspect on the transiting Saturn, and the third aspect of the transiting Saturn on the Taurus sign in the 10th house. This is a very, very strong placement of gaining through service and making money only if you're able to overcome challenges, issues, problems which the transiting Saturn may bring in from time to time. However, Saturn is more protective of when it is in the 12th house or the 8th house in the 12th sign, which is Pisces, which it is a Karak of, which means Saturn will be protective, but Saturn will also want you to change or transform, work hard, put in the effort to be able to overcome firefighting situations, then gain in your career. Because Saturn's third aspect is not only in the Taurus sign, the sign of nutrition, money, livelihood, but also the 2nd house, which is also the house of nutrition, money, especially in the 6th sign of Virgo, which is also the sign of service. And your Sagittarius, your Capricorn Saturn is in the 6th house, especially for Leo rising sign people. So this is overall gain making placement from your rising sign perspective, but do see in your natal chart which is your rising sign if your Saturn is in the Capricorn sign, and then see how many houses, which houses Saturn rules and where it is placed, and then the third transiting Saturn away from the natal Saturn, what potential it is bringing for you. Now, for those people who have an Aquarius Saturn, which means Saturn is placed in your Aquarius sign in your natal chart. So you have already gone through a Saturn return placement, and Saturn is moving away from its natal placement into the Pisces sign in transit. So you have Saturn which comes back into its natal position. It comes after more than 28 plus years, between 20 to 30 years, which means the natal Saturn has given you a lot of opportunity to learn from your experiences so far, and it has also been a teaching placement while it was in Aquarius. So if you learn the lesson while it was there, then the transiting Saturn is creating opportunities for you to earn and be stable in your earning, to have financial security and make money through assets. So people may buy assets, people may move into new homes, people may buy conveniences. A lot of gains may come to you if you learned your lessons while Saturn was in Aquarius sign and now moving into the Pisces sign, because the natal Saturn's, the transiting Saturn is moving into the 2nd house from the natal Saturn. So this is an overall very, very good placement. However, the natal Saturn is in the 12th house from the transiting Saturn, which means if you have not learned the lesson, then the losses, the expenses, the challenges may come to you. And then you may make losses in assets. You may make losses in cars, conveniences. So if you really learned your lesson, you respect boundaries, you respect rules and regulations, then the transiting Saturn is making a lot of gains to you, especially, and also giving you an ability to overcome certain issues, certain problems, and then make assets. And also gain from your interdepartment rapport with other people from other departments. So this is a powerful transition of Saturn. However, this is the example of the natal Saturn being in Aquarius, but the rising sign could be any. So let's take any other rising sign at random and see how the natal Saturn placed in Aquarius may bring different potentials for you. Let's say the rising sign in your natal chart is Virgo rising sign, while your natal Saturn is placed in the Aquarius sign. So now, if your natal Saturn is in the Aquarius sign and it is now moving into Pisces sign, I'm talking about rising sign Virgo. We could have taken any, but for example, we are taking a Virgo sign. So from the natal Saturn, transiting Saturn is going into the second house, but in the 7th house of partnership, of teamwork. So here, the transiting Saturn is giving you an ability to work in a partnership with somebody you already knew, maybe a colleague, maybe who was also your competition earlier. And then in a partnership, being able to even make gains, long distance travel, higher education, higher qualification, and through that an enhancement of stature. However, this is also placement of a new partnership, which could be even marriage, a new conjugal relationship also being established. So the home also being established. Maybe with a person coming in from long distance who is also somebody who is very well placed, economically even better than you. And because the transiting Saturn is aspecting the Lagna, so surely an enhancement in stature connected to service, connected to partnership is also coming to you. So overall, very, very good placement. However, we are just taking the example of Virgo rising sign. Whichever is your rising sign where natal Saturn is placed in Aquarius, do see in which house Saturn rules while it is in Aquarius, and then see the potential of the transiting Saturn in Pisces from there. Now, if you have a Pisces sign in your natal chart, so in your birth chart, if you have the natal Saturn being in the Pisces sign, so now Saturn coming back in its transit to the Pisces sign is a return placement. This is one of the most karmic placements. Saturn comes back to its return placement once after 28 years plus, which means the Saturn is coming back to, this is a return placement, which Saturn is saying, if you have learned the lessons which I have asked you to learn, then I'm going to reward you. If you have not learned the lesson, then Saturn return placement can be a very big kick in the butt also for those people who have not learned the lesson, especially because from a natal as well as transiting Saturn's perspective, both the aspects, the third aspect is on the Taurus sign, the 7th aspect is on the Virgo sign, which is also the sign of service. The Taurus sign in the 3rd house is the house of making money through effort. And the 10th aspect is on the Sagittarius sign, through higher learning, through high experiences, then making money and gaining in career. So if you have learned the lesson, then with effort, you will make money. Through effort, you will be able to establish better partnerships and also be able to make gains in service connected to career, especially if you are using your learning, if you are applying your qualification, your experiential learning and your competency, then this is a fantastic period for you. However, this is a placement that we have taken for the Pisces natal placement, but the rising sign could be anything. So let's take any rising sign at random where the natal Saturn is in the Pisces sign. Let's take the example of Libra rising sign. Being an example, we could have taken any rising sign where natal Saturn is placed in Pisces. Here we are taking the example of Libra being the rising sign where Saturn is the Yoga Karaka, ruler of the 4th and the 5th house. So very strong placement. So for a Libra rising sign people, while Saturn is in the Pisces sign, the transiting Saturn is also getting into the Pisces sign in the 6th house of service. And from the 6th house of service, both the natal Saturn and the transiting Saturn are aspecting with the 3rd aspect, the Taurus sign in the 8th house, which means overcoming transformation, overcoming challenges, overcoming issues, overcoming competition and making money. Sudden opportunity giving to you in service connected to money in foreign lands or multinational corporations. However, this can also be replacement with small sicknesses. Niggling issues can also come up. Be a little careful where your nutrition and food is concerned, especially because both the Saturns are aspecting the 3rd house of effort in the Sagittarius sign, which is a fiery sign. So through effort, ability to make more money, transformation in your career, with your ability to overcome obstructions in service, in foreign land is being highlighted, is being donated. So here we are taking the example of Libra rising sign. You can take any example, whichever may be your rising sign. If your Saturn is in the Pisces sign, then what kind of potential it is bringing to you. So friend, now that we have seen how Saturn in its transit in the Pisces sign, depending on how many houses it is going away from each other, are creating new opportunities, new potential for you. Do see with respect to your rising sign how many houses the transiting Saturn is going and creating either gains for you or small challenges or issues, and keeping that in mind, then be able to face this Saturn's transit in the Pisces sign. So friends, like this video, share this video, and if you're looking for a personal consultation from me, please reach out to me. The link is given below. Until some other time, some other video, this is your friend astrologer and guide Irfan signing off. Ciao.